So the other thing for me is I want to be a part of something that's been around since mankind showed up, and to see what we can do to contribute to the whole cosmology and constellation of being human.
And I think that the knowledge in this community that we're part of is really valuable to the larger medical community, to emergency services, to law enforcement, to people who run festivals. People, their minds are becoming more and more open towards receiving this kind of information, and I think it's a really good time and era to share it. And so we have a certain charge to do that well to the best of our abilities.
Yeah, I see that we're just kind of in another run of the dark ages of a different kind, and eventually there'll be new poems that are written, and new plays and new romances, and there will be entheogens center stage. I think people will be happy saying, wow, it's too bad this was suppressed for so long. Some questions over here. Cypress or Brian, did you want to? Okay. Cypress.
I had another comment as far as resources, which one I just came upon recently, which is rollsafe.org.
Rollsafe?
Rollsafe?
Rollsafe.org.
R-O-L-E.
R-O-L-L.
Who are they?
I don't rightfully know, but a website with good information.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, this is, I guess, the shadow side of your question. But what are some of the challenges that you face as women who are advocating for the role of entheogens and healing from trauma and expanding consciousness? And how do you deal with those? If you face them and sort of assuming that you do.
I have an answer to that.
The biggest challenge we face is the number of new drugs that no one can stay on top of. The Erowoods wrote a foreword to our manual, and John Hanna, who worked with the Erowoods, edited the document. And one of the reasons we had them write the foreword is so that they could keep pointing out, as they always do, that there are many, many new alphabetamines, like we like to call them, out there that the Erowoods can't stay on top of it. We certainly can't stay on top of it. People come all the time into care spaces and tell us that they've taken some new substance none of us have heard of. We have no idea what it does. And of course we're on our phones and we go to Erowid to see whether anybody else has heard of this substance. No one can stay on top of it. There are many more new emerging substances that anyone can rightfully catalog, and that's a huge challenge. And that will always be the case. I think human beings have a powerful desire to alter their consciousness and do it in new ways, and they seek novelty. And it will always be so.
Digest.
I can try. I'm digesting too still. It feels sort of repetitive, so the only thing I'll say is that the primary challenges have to do, for me, with the legal status of these substances and the frustration that arises in me around the consequences of the laws that are in place, and my inability to offer these medicines that I think could really benefit people to them at this time. Yeah.
Mine would be safety, confidentiality, huge, and it's yeah, and it's interesting. So I keep it in the context of sacred, and I think that we're in really interesting times. That's an obvious statement, but because there's a lot of people in the larger community that don't agree with the war on drugs. It's a massive drain of finances, and the government's broke. But there's a lot of knee-jerk reactions and responses, and so I would encourage people to be much more judicious about their conversations around these things and to keep them safe. Because in the traditional cultures and in the prophecies, there is a time when these plants and these medicines will go away if they're used incorrectly, and if we don't participate in what they share with us. So, you know, when we do these things, it's incumbent upon us to take the information that's provided and enact it, which kind of gets to the making the changes. Because the spirit realm, this is more, the spirit realm, you know, they're partners in this, and they want to know the advice that they're giving is any good, in a way, you know. So it would be, I think the biggest challenge is safety and finding ways for people, because so much of this is a response to the overwhelming desire for touching the sacred or something larger. And as a culture, we don't have any initiatory processes, except, you know, 16, you can get a license, and at 21, you can go into a bar, and at 18, we'll send you off to one of the gazillion wars that we have going. So I think as people, if we can create better choices, so getting support for better choices.
Definitely safety, also humility. Yeah, there's room for ego everywhere, and there's no room for ego in medicine work. Really. I'll also say that, you know, we seem to be living in a culture that is quite patriarchal still, and that domination is reflected when you look at the corporate world and medicine and a lot of institutions. There's not a lot of female voices, which is part of why we're having this forum today, is to give some space for women. And if you look at the conference that took place, Psychedelic Science 2013 last year, there was one woman on the clinical track. It happens to be a friend of ours, Alicia Danforth, who's an amazing, profound human being and researcher. She was the one female voice on the whole clinical track. So where are the women? Are they doing the research? Do they want to? Are they having the same opportunities or not? I don't know the answers to these questions, but I'm just putting them out there and saying that that's something we need to look at.
The token woman used to be Mountain Girl. I guess she retired. She was replaced.
She's around.
One woman.
I think it depends what you mean by research.
Sure.
This is a really long-running discussion that many of us have had. A lot of women go into qualitative, not quantitative research. You know, at the Women's Visionary Congress, we make a point of inviting women and also some men to speak about their research, very broadly defined. Traditional people, indigenous cultures have their own version of research. Clinical trials are only quantitative research as defined by the government. And so it's important to remember that. If you want the government to define what research is, and only what research is as to that definition, then that's very narrow. If you broaden the definition of research to include both qualitative oral history, traditional knowledge, wisdom keepers, personal experimentation, medical analysis, it's a very broad field.
I'm just shaking my head because I really agree with that. I see the nature of the sort of scientific field being so heavily emphasizing experimental research at the expense of really missing out on the qualitative and subjective and phenomenological and, in my opinion, interesting data that's out there and that many people are doing about these sorts of experiences and really everything. And yeah, I think it's really too bad that these voices aren't getting heard so much.
The The other obstacle is just plain ignorance and stupidity, which is unfortunate, but back in January, I was coming to attend an ERIE event. It was the East-South Dialogue, and the security guard here at the building was really irritated, and I just was trying to be pleasant with him and say hello as I walked in, and he was like, "Oh, there's all these people here for this dope conference." That's what he said. And I said, "Oh, I'm going to that conference, and I'd like to just inform you that that's not what it's about." But it was just very clear that he had a fixed perspective and was not available to hear anything other. And it was, the elevator couldn't come soon enough. So, that's at our integral institution. Granted, I don't think CIS is who is choosing who's working the door, but maybe we should.
Well, there should be,
There's a
message should be
good
sent
term.
out.
Yeah, that message could be sent,
There's
yes.
a good term to put out, it's called the human sciences, and that's a category that all the qualitative stuff is under, and it's from Europe, called continental philosophy. So it's the highest form of healer, really, the philosopher's healer. And it's valid, and it's good to challenge the quantitative people, because it doesn't hold water when they try to make science based on the quantitative. It just doesn't work anymore. There was some experiments done where they tried to limit the coursework for getting your license in clinical psych, and they told the clinical psychologist, "Okay, you come up with the methodology, and the test will run. And you use your own quantitative methodology," and they found out, that they couldn't validate using the quantitative method only, because it didn't do any better than a bartender. It was a bartender, a cab driver, and a clinical psychologist. And there was no, this is when brought into the courts of Canada, and the ABA also knows about this, because they didn't challenge it, because it was done so well with quantitative people, the method itself. So, there is room, and it's been opened up. It's called the human sciences. Worthwhile taking a look at it.
That's great, and it's presencing me to a memory that slightly different, but I'd like to share with you. Prior to becoming a naturopathic doctor, I was a pharmaceutical chemist, and so I spent all day making drugs, legal ones. And there was a very interesting point in my research where I was, my boss and I were both making batches of the same compound to put into studies and enzyme assays and working with poor little mice and rats. And he is one of the most miserable people I've ever met in my life. And I was really convinced that the quality of the medicine was different, because the quantitative assays showed different results for the same quote-unquote chemical. I was pretty happy at that time, and he wasn't, so, who knows?
Chemists who create LSD, have said that for many years, that it's the intention that they put into the synthesis of the compound that impacts the nature of the compound itself. That sounds like alchemy to a lot of people, but it's a complex world, and a mysterious one.
What's the quantum physics study, or that the observer changes the experience?
Hawthorne effect.
Yeah.
Yeah, they put intention on water, and
Yeah,
the
that's
water
right.
molecules move and dance, and based on the intention.
It's back to intention. Intentionality.
Was it the Hawthorne effect?
No, I just laughed because I know that because I'm studying for the licensing exam
Oh.
right now. No other reason.
Remember the time.
Any other questions?
Mine's not really a question, but something I used to do back in the hippie days and food not bombs days is I did They're a little similar, except I was dealing more with special needs and disabilities and people with dogs and kids for like Food Not Moms conferences that would come in town. So it was very low income. And so I did it as a fairy godmother team that worked out really well. That was partly to make sure people didn't think they were cops. And you know, they would be watching for things, so it was very proactive. But so it's not medical, it's special needs, like when we were in Golden Gate Park, some people needed help getting into the park in their wheelchair, or getting behind the band stage to use the disabled restroom because you can't use the regular one. So there's a whole bunch of, and I would like to offer that to add to your book. It's a slightly different angle, but it's an enhanced piece. So, because there's a lot of sort of things that are normally taken care of, or toxics. There's a lot of people that are chemically sensitive now, some people spotting toxics, or dealing with, some people are allergic to smoke without becoming cops around the smoke. That's why we have to be very glad. So that was kind of fun, because everybody loves fairy godmother.
Thank you.
I've been noticing that a lot of people that are kind of on the ascension, awakened tip have more sensitive bodies. And I'm not sure which came first. You know, like something happened. And do you think that there's a correlation there between how sensitive a human being is, whether they're born more open or more cracked open than someone else, and the sensitivity, for example, like caffeine, more of a sensitive or to lower doses of psychedelics or entheogens? Do you think there's a correlation there?
I can speak to that. From what I've witnessed, absolutely. The people that I know who I would describe as extremely sensitive personalities also seem to be very sensitive to substances overall. And with those people, they tend to need a lot less. Yeah.
So do you think that we're becoming more sensitive as human beings, and then therefore are tuning into these other more subtle dimensions? I just see this correlation between like it takes a more sensitive body, or like emotional or physical or spiritual, to access these other subtle dimensions, and therefore open to the infinite possibilities.
I think it's a good question, and I think it was maybe what Patricia was saying in terms of as people age, they take lower doses and they tend to be more sensitive, and I've noticed that for myself over time and through the work that I've done, becoming more sensitive and open. I can only speak to personal experience, though.
If I understand your question, I think it's really layered. Everybody is different, you know, all the way down to fingertips, our fingerprints, our eyes, our voice, and then the way we come in, you know. So we have the physical body, but there are ways we can tune it up and take care of it, and so I think that's a component. I think that we have access to more information, and we're becoming more aware. And if you are usually on this sort of path, you're tending to all aspects of yourself, your body, mind, spirit, soul. And the whole goal of becoming conscious is to remember who you are. So as that becomes more compelling, you know, it's like you get to this exponential point also. And then once you hit that threshold, things happen faster. And the world needs us to wake up fast. So that, I think, is a component. And I think that there's a danger in, identifying yourself or somebody as being too sensitive or too conscious or getting there or I am. Usually that's a declaration of somebody that isn't yet. So, and the other thing is like really learning to manage energy, your own personal energy. And that's the biggest thing when we begin to open up and wake up, is our energy can be all over the place. And in the West, there's not a lot of modalities or emphasis put on really controlling and managing your energy. And that gets into the subtle realms as well. So I think it's good news. And I think it's something to keep and work constantly. Because the other thing is, a lot of people have boundary issues and self-esteem issues. And so it's like really working and managing those. So it's a lot of things.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to speak a little bit to the physiological impact. There are a series of enzymes in the liver that are responsible for a good portion of the metabolism of psychedelic drugs and pharmaceutical drugs in general. And one's nutritional status can impact how you actually synthesize those enzymes. So if you don't have enough B vitamins on board or iron or a whole host of things, you might not actually make enough of the enzyme that's required to metabolize a particular substance. So that could make you maybe a little more sensitive physiologically at certain times. If you are of a particular ethnic background, that also impacts the expression of the genes for these particular enzymes. So that's one piece. The other piece is what other things you're putting into your body in terms of physiologically. So for example, if you're using grapefruit on a regular basis and drinking grapefruit juice or eating grapefruit or that can interfere with your hepatic or your liver's metabolism, and so you might not clear things as readily from the body. If you're using St. John's wort as an herb, often used for mild depression, it can actually induce these enzymes so that you clear things more rapidly from the body. So there's a physiological component in terms of one's genetic makeup, how things are expressed, the nutritional and pharmacological aspects that are on board that have to do with sensitivity on that metabolic, pharmacological, physiological level. Then there's also the how do you digest your life? Are you someone that can be with discomfort and get comfortable with discomfort, so that if you're in a situation, entheogenic or otherwise, where there's some challenging material emerging, can you surf the wave, or is it going to take you down? So I do think that the more work you do, again, I can only really speak for myself too. I think I have definitely gotten more sensitive to the subtle realms and have more awareness of my body and more desire to have more discipline and love for myself and the planet, and things that I think are innate in all of us, but that often get socialized out, or we get we think maybe we need to be buying X, Y, or Z. Consumerism kind of can trump the sensitivity in our culture. So we're kind of working to flex muscles that are culturally atrophied and that we don't have good models for. So we're relearning, and the entheogens help directly, explicitly and implicitly, and then it's also part of why we have these conversations, to learn from each other and learn how we can take care of ourselves better as we go along. Yeah.
I'll just throw in a little philosophical thing. If, we are energy, and in the universe there's constructive energy and destructive or creative and destructive, and then there's a third energy that, in the old schools they call it irrelevant, which is a bad word for it. But it's that constant. So if we pay attention to the negative that's going on, that's what we'll see. If we look at the positives, we'll see that. So really the view becomes life. The sun rises and the sun sets. The mountains are there, the seasons change. So that's life living life. That's the manifestation of Mother Earth. And so we are a manifestation of that. So if we really key into that, and it gets back to that steady part, that's, the inquiry becomes, how can I live life? How can I live life to the best that I can do?
Yeah, sure. I had one more thought on this. It's an interesting question to sit with. And I was thinking about how, first of all, we come into the world with different levels of sensitivity based on our temperament. But also that over time, based on our experiences, we start to desensitize because a lot of the trauma and the fast pace of this culture and our experiences can be too much. And so we clamp down, we numb down, we desensitize. And in terms of the intergenerational trend, this was just a thought that came to mind. I think that we're slowly starting to heal a lot of the trauma, the intergenerational trauma that's been passed down. My sense is that there's a fair amount of that healing that's happening through medicine work and through therapy and through various other methods. And as we heal those things, we're able to be more open to our children, to allow them to experience and express their emotions and move things, traumatic experiences through them, rather than having them sort of clamp down on their experiences and desensitize them. Along with that, you can look at the sort of the medical industry that we currently have and the ways that pharmaceutical drugs have been used to sort of numb out emotions, and how I think, or I hope, that there's a movement away from that and towards feeling and experiencing our feelings. And in doing that, I think we can become more open and more sensitive.
There's also a morphogenic field that gets created as more and more people become conscious. It makes it easier for everybody else to come along with.
Mm-hmm. Like the 100th monkey.
Yeah.
Well, it's been a very rich day, a very long day, and I want to say thank you to all of our speakers today for being here and taking the time and volunteering their time, really. One day, ERIE will be able to compensate our speakers. But we really appreciate you taking the time and putting your energy here and giving the female voice. We have some gifts for you we'd like to give you.
We'd like to thank Natalie for organizing this.
Yay, Natalie.
Thank you, Miss Natalie.
Yeah, really, what a beautiful event. Thank you for providing the opportunity for us as women to get our voice out there.
Thank you.
Looking so fabulous.
Very profound.
Yeah.
And I'd like to acknowledge all the other ERIE members that make this happen too. Larry in the back, and Adrian over here with the camera, Erica, and Adrian, and Alexis. There's been a lot of help to make this happen. Sorry if I left anybody else out. Julie, of course. I just happened to be one of the vectors. So I'm going to leave us with one of my favorite poems that just seems really appropriate. I'm going to stand because it's best said standing. This is a poem by Maya Angelou called Phenomenal Woman. Pretty women wonder where my secret lies. I'm not cute or built to suit a fashion model's size. But when I start to tell them, they think I'm telling lies. I say, it's in the reach of my arms, the span of my hips, the stride of my step, the curl of my lips. I'm a woman, phenomenally. Phenomenal woman, that's me. I walk into a room just as cool as you please, and to a man the fellows stand or fall down on their knees. Then they swarm around me, a hive of honeybees. I say, it's the fire in my eyes and the flash of my teeth, the swing in my waist and the joy in my feet. I'm a woman, phenomenally. Phenomenal woman, that's me. Men themselves have wondered what they see in me. They try so much, but they can't touch my inner mystery. When I try to show them, they say they still can't see. I say, it's in the arch of my back, the sun of my smile, the ride of my breasts, the grace of my style. I'm a woman, phenomenally. Phenomenal woman, that's me. Now you understand just why my head's not bowed. I don't shout or jump about or have to talk real loud. When you see me passing, I ought to make you proud. I say, it's in the click of my heels, the bend of my hair, the palm of my hand, the need for my care. 'Cause I'm a woman, phenomenally. Phenomenal woman. That's we. Oh.